Hello there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome to another Fallout 4 challenge run. My last run with only revolvers was simple, so today we're going to take on something a little bit more complex while we find out if I can beat Fallout 4 survival difficulty as a child of Adam. Before we get into the run, let's lay down some ground rules. I can only use weapons and armor used by the children of Adam or given to me by the children of Adam. I must play the entire game on the survival difficulty. I can't use any bugs or glitches on purpose to exploit the game. I can only use visual mods with the exception of the Start Me Up mod, and I cannot use console commands for anything but fixing bugs and setting up the run. With the rules of the run laid out, let's take a look at the challenge itself. This is the first of many thematic runs I have planned for the channel, and I'm really excited to try it out. I'm writing the script as I go, and all of this part has been written prior to beginning the run, so if you want to skip past my starting thoughts and get right into the gameplay, skip to the timecode on screen now. So the big thing to start off with is weaponry. As far as I know, I will only be able to use the Gamma Gun, Radium Rifle, and Adam's Judgment throughout this run. Given the Gamma Gun has obvious weaknesses against most enemies, it will most likely only be useful to me in the beginning of the run and against certain human enemies, and I hope to get a Radium Rifle pretty early on in order to have a more balanced weapon for the run. As far as Adam's Judgment is concerned, I don't plan on having a high strength build, but it should be really useful against certain enemies and in certain situations. Moving on from weaponry, I want to point out that I plan to start the run with a mod called Start Me Up, which will allow me to start the game in a variety of different places across the Commonwealth and with various items and gear. I was a bit iffy on if I should use the mod, but thematically it works really well, and we're going to be starting in the Glowing Sea with only basic Child of Adam gear, so it shouldn't make the run any easier. In fact, I expect it to make the early game way harder due to the radiation and the enemies in the Glowing Sea just being way out of my league in the beginning of the game. With that out of the way, let's move on to the last section of my pre-run thoughts, which is the armor available to us for this run. So the only basic armor we really have access to is Children of Adam robes, and they are kind of bad. There's some unique variants of it that make them a lot better, but until I can get to Far Harbor and get the Zealot Marine armor, we are going to be incredibly squishy. Overall, I think the early game of this run is going to be the hardest section, and I feel we're going to need to rush to Far Harbor in order to make this run any kind of bearable. But that's enough talk. Go into the comments below and let me know if you think I can beat this run. I think I can, but the early game is going to be a huge stumbling block. With that out of the way, let's get right into the gameplay. I start the run in my pre-war bathroom where I craft a beautiful Apostle of Adam before going to exit my bathroom where I realize that this is only a dream. After going through some basic questions that determine where I start in the Commonwealth as well as what items I have, I then fill out my character's special stats and name. I went with 1 in strength because Adam provides all the strength I need, 5 in perception because a child must be aware, 6 in endurance because the faithful endure, 3 in charisma because Adam is convincing enough all on his own, 8 in intelligence because Adam has blessed his flock with true knowledge, 4 in agility because I couldn't come up with a pun, and 1 in luck because who needs luck when Adam is on your side. After that, I wake up in the Crater of Adam surrounded by my fellow Children of Adam. I then have a revelation that this dream I just had must be a sign that I need to go on a holy pilgrimage, so I leave the Crater of Adam and his holy glow and make my way towards Boston. I carefully avoid all the mutated monstrosities that follow Adam's holy glow until I exit the Glowing Sea victoriously, only to die to a Mirelurk King. Well, that was a big surprise, wasn't it? I reload into the Crater of Adam and accidentally steal one of Adam's holy bottles from this irradiated pond, and this transgression obviously cannot be forgiven, so my fellow followers of his holy glow kill me without mercy. Yes, I can't take this beer bottle. Oh no.
Feel Adam's
It's written somewhere in Adam's holy text that the third time is indeed the charm, and this time I managed to trek all the way out of the Glowing Sea and make my way much further north where I find a thirsty hobo asking for some water. I give them some water as Adam provides to those in need, and afterwards continue north until I find a wild mongrel guarding a bridge. I think I'm being clever when I try and jump past it onto this bridge, but end up dying to the fiend gained before trying again, this time just avoiding it while I reach a small empty settlement called the Red Rocket Truck Stop. It's here where I find a friendly dog and some mean mole rats that I quickly divide using my gamma gun. I then give myself some tattoos for my successful pilgrimage out of the glowing sea before continuing on my journey to find a way to one of Adam's most holy of sites, an island off the east coast known as Far Harbor, which is notorious for Adam's holy glow. After a long and uneventful journey, I reach the east coast of the Commonwealth and head north up the shoreline until I find a small house. I hear fighting inside and decide to check it out, and I find two parents arguing. I talk to them and they explain to me that their daughter has run away and they don't know where she went. I offer to help find her, and my investigation reveals that she went to Far Harbor. I inform the father, and he offers the use of his automatic magical boat to take me to Far Harbor to find his daughter, and I agree. I take the magic boat ride and arrive at Far Harbor, where I speak with an old lady who is kind and welcoming, as long as a tough guy with a big gun who is angry and hates me because I wasn't born in his town. But pretty soon into our conversation, we're interrupted by the town being under attack, and I've been asked to help defend it. I try and help defend it, but end up dying to some anglers who managed to shoot at me through a wall? Well, that was unfortunate, but not unexpected. I go at it again, and here's a dark time lapse that YouTube's compression algorithm will butcher while I ask you to like and subscribe, as it helps the video get traction in the algorithm and the channel grow. Also, in case you didn't notice, last week I started streaming the recording sessions of these runs to this YouTube channel. If you want to catch up on the VODs, you can join the channel membership program to see them. Alright, with that shill over, we managed to thwart the attack, and I go ahead and continue speaking with the old lady and angry guy again. They tell me a bunch of stuff before the angry guy begins to rant about the other children of Adam on the island. I'm confused by his anger at Adam and figure it's because his store is just doing poorly, so I sell all my worldly items to him before buying a radium rifle off him, and with that we have our new primary weapon for the run. Well, at least until I can get a legendary variant. After all the trading is said and done, I make my way to the local bar and get a free ice-cold beer, which is quite hospitable of these people to give me. I then take a nap and speak with an old guy who brags about how long his fellow is, whatever that means. I then ask him to take me to Acadia, and he responds by saying that I'm a weak little baby and he won't do it unless I get him whiskey. I then realize that I had just spent all of my caps getting the radium rifle and ammo for it, so I'm broke. I end up having to sell a stim pack in order to get him his whiskey, so this better be worth it. He then leads me out of town where we encounter some trappers, and at first I think it'll be fine. Our longest of fellows will deal with them, but nope. They murder me with a Molotov and I try again only to die again to some bullets. I'm starting to feel really under-leveled for this area as I practically do no damage to them and they murder me so quickly, but on the next attempt, I'm hiding after killing this trapper who tried to charge me down, and out of nowhere Cassie from Far Harbor runs in front of me, which was funny, and then I turn around to see the entire town of Far Harbor has come out to show these trappers what for. I was dying laughing as this happened, and the trappers are eventually dealt with by the entire town of Far Harbor, and I continue on my way following Old Longfellow. After a while, we encounter some angry wolves, and I hide atop a rock until he kills them off, and we continue, only to be assaulted by some mirelurks, which scare me so bad, but somehow I seem to not be dying for the time being as I walk up towards the summit of this mountain. As we're scaling the mountain, we find some ghouls, which I run away from, and they attack our guide. I then encounter a woman blessed by the light of Adam who tells me of the nucleus. I mark the location on my map, and then Old Longfellow yells at her before we enter Acadia, and I get lectured by a synth who's into extreme body modification before trying to get Kasumi to go back to her dad and mom. Unfortunately though, she says no and ropes me into committing some espionage on the leaders of Acadia because she feels they're up to something. I agree, but instead of actually helping her right now, I instead decide to leave Acadia and make my way towards the nucleus, where I arrive to find find 5 children of Adam standing outside some form of military installation. They're having a conversation about devotion, which ends in this dude getting absolutely blasted by his lady friend. I then speak with the man who seems to be in charge, and his name is Grand Zealot Richter, who tells me that if I want to join the children, I need to go drink from a holy spring nearby the nucleus. I make my way there and take a sip from Adam's holy spring, and it makes me feel really weird.
The young zealot's vision blurs as the world shifts around them, and they hear a heavenly voice as a shadowy figure starts leading them through Adam's holy fog. The pilgrimage through the fog reveals great sights of glowing radstags and shadowy figures that swirl around their vision as they are led along a path with destination unknown. Eventually, the shadowy guide points to a shrine to Atom, and when the zealot approaches, they find themselves swarmed by ghouls. At first it seems as though they are caught off guard and die to the ghouls a few times, but this was all part of the vision, as eventually they deal with Adam's trail of ghouls and find a holy icon, which they bring back to Grand Zealot Richter, who allows entrance into the holy nucleus.
Ugh, what happened? I have such a headache. Where am I? Oh, I'm in the nucleus, and the High Confessor is giving a sermon? Great. I patiently wait for him to finish, and then give him the icon. He then gives me a note and says to read it when I'm ready to do some work for Adam. I then decide to spend a lot of time side questing here inside the nucleus, and I start off by speaking to Grand Zealot Richter, who tells me of a wayward child of Adam who is defiling holy sites and asks me to rid her from the island. I agree to do so, but decide that I should speak with some other children of Adam here to see if there's anything I can do inside the nucleus. The next person I speak to is Zealot Ware, who asks me to help with his friend, Brother Devin. He tells me that Devin and himself aren't blessed by Adam and are hurt by rads much like myself. He then says that Devin has been on a fast, eating nothing and only drinking irradiated water, and he thinks it's killing him. He wants me to save Devin's life, so I head over to Devin and try and talk him out of his fast, but it doesn't work, so I return to Zealot Ware, who hatches a scheme for me to get highly irradiated and put on a get-up to convince Devin that I'm the messenger he's been waiting for. Luckily, I was already highly irradiated when speaking to Zealot Ware, so all I have to do is put on the get-up and convince Devin that I'm the messenger he's been waiting for. I do so and walk up to Devin and tell him he's free from his shackles, and this lets him break his fast and start taking care of himself again. After collecting my reward from Zealot Ware, I decide that I should speak with Sister Mai, a shopkeeper here in the nucleus, who tells me that I need to go delving into a super mutant infested factory in order to get a pump regulator for their decontamination arches at the entrance of the nucleus. I agree to do so, and then speak with Sister Thiel about Sister Gwyneth, the child of Adam Richter ordered me to kill, and she tells me to check the holy sites, and I tell her I'll find Gwyneth. Now we have 2 quests that require us to leave the nucleus, but I still think I have at least one more I can do here, so I open my inventory and read the High Confessor's note, which tells me to investigate Sister Aubert. She just so happens to be in the vessel, a pre-war nuclear missile submarine, tending to its reactor known as the Crypt. I try speaking with her, but there's just too much radiation nearby, so instead I snoop around her bunk and find a note talking about a locked footlocker that she's been using to communicate with another child of Adam. I decide to investigate further and find a key to the footlocker in the bathrooms near the entrance of the nucleus before returning to the vessel and opening the footlocker to find a note showing blasphemous words written by none other than Sister Aubert. I then take the note to the High Confessor to prove her guilt, and in return he gives me this amazing piece of gear called the Inquisitor's Cowl, which not only looks amazing, but increases my intelligence based on how many rads I've absorbed. This item is incredibly broken when combined with the Robes of Adam's Devoted, which has a secret/broken legendary effect that makes me completely immune to rads once I pass 90% rads on my HP bar, and this allows me to boost my intelligence from 8 all the way up to 12. Really quickly, I'd like to explain how the Robes of Adam's Devoted works and justify using it in this run, since I usually have a hard rule about not using glitches arches, and this could be defined as one. The way the robes work is they give you increasing radiation resistance the more rads you have, but for some reason, after rads take up more than 90% of your HP bar, all of a sudden the game acts like you no longer have any rads. You can heal back up to full HP, and you have full HP, but your health bar is fully red and you no longer absorb rads from anything but eating, and you cannot die to rads. This basically makes rads a non-factor in game, and I've also spent some time thinking about if I should be able to use this item in my run. In the end, I feel like it's okay because it makes sense thematically for the run for us to be immune to rads. Also, it's not like I'm initiating a glitch or doing anything uncommon in your gameplay. Like, literally, it is wearing a piece of armor and ignoring rads, which I do all the time. People always complain about how many rads I absorb, and it's because I hate RadAway. So, overall, I don't think it's all that impactful, especially considering the armor itself is really bad, and I think it's a really cool build, and it will help me with navigating Far Harbor just a little bit. With that out of the way, I think it's time to tackle some side quests outside of the nucleus. I make my way outside to the holy sites and find that they have been desecrated by a banner that informs me of a campground nearby. I head over to the campground and find a journal belonging to Gwyneth before I'm assaulted by some wolves. After I divide them in Adam's holy site, I listen to the journal, which leads me to a church where I find Gwyneth. After a short conversation, it's revealed that she is not willing to change her ways and return to the nucleus, and that she is also unwilling to leave the island, so I divide her, sending her back to Adam for her heresy. I then return to the nucleus and report to Richter, who gives me a holy relic and weapon known as Adam's Judgment. It's a super sledge with a head made out of 4 fusion cores that are melted together, and it has a unique legendary effect that causes it to deal another 100 radiation damage on top of the super sledge's already very high damage. It's a really cool weapon, but since we have 1 strength, it's not going to be particularly useful to us outside of niche situations where melee just happens to make sense. This weapon alone almost made me make this a very melee focused run, but in the end I decided I wanted to use the radium rifle more, as I think it has some really fun effects as well with its unique legendaries. Speaking of which, I decide to take all of the loot from these quests, with a few exceptions like Adam's Judgment, and sell it all before speaking with Brother Kane, who sells the kiloton radium rifle. I buy this legendary weapon of Adam, which has the explosive effect, adding explosions to every shot it fires, which deal 25 damage, that scales up with the Demolitions Expert perk. With my arsenal fully kitted out, I feel it's time to take on Sister Mai's task of obtaining the pump for the decontamination arches from the super mutant factory. I head off towards the Vim factory and manage to kill the first super mutant I find with little issue, only to die to a suicider when I shoot its bomb. Attempting again, I realize there's a trapper encampment on the way to the Vim factory and decide that dealing with the trappers may prove useful, as they have a bed here that I can use for a save point. Unfortunately though, they prove to be very tough customers, as I die over and over and over to their heretical ways. Eventually, I manage to kill them off and claim my very much deserved nap on their bed before continuing my assault on the Vim factory. I end up dying quite a few times to these super mutants, guns, missiles, and melee weapons, but in the end, after a ton of suffering, I managed to kill off all of the mutants outside the factory and then sneak my way inside to grab the pump before leaving the mutants to their ruin of a factory. I then return to the nucleus, speak with Mai, who gives me the Radical Conversion Radium Rifle, a legendary that ignores enemy resistances. It's kind of disappointing since I didn't know I could get a free legendary radium rifle, but overall I'm not too upset because we have the kiloton radium rifle, which is better, and this one will sell for a decent price. I then install the pump and set it up to spray radiation instead of removing it, and with that I've done all of the Child of Adam quests available to me for now. I want to help the brothers and sisters of Adam here on the island as much as possible, but in order to progress their goals further, I must gather intelligence on their enemies. I want to start with the infernal robots of Acadia, so I make my way inside the observatory and find a note on the storage room that says a synth named Cog has the key. When I go speak with him about getting the key, he tells me he lost it moving things around the upper level of the observatory, so I go up and find the key before sneaking into the storage room and listening to a meeting between Dima, Faraday, and Chase, where I learn that Dima has memories stored in the command center of the nucleus. I then steal the program to let me access the memories from Faraday's desk before speaking with Dima, who asks me to infiltrate the nucleus and access his memories. I agree and head out to the nucleus, where I enter the command center and start fighting my way through the robots and turrets inside. The combat is going well, and if you're a channel member, you should check out the VOD, as we have a ton of funny moments as I fight my way through the robots. It isn't too horrible to slog through them, and I take it slow using the kiloton radium rifle, which does an admirable job of dealing with the Protectron's turrets and Mr. Gutsy inside. I do end up having this scary moment with an Assaultron, but in the end I managed to take it down and make my way to the final room of the command center, where I flip a switch and oh no, that's a legendary Assaultron and I'm dead. Well, I try again, and this time I run away once I flip the switch before returning to get some clean shots on the Assaultron. I managed to blow its legs off before ending its pitiful existence to get a legendary armor piece. I also get blown up by the death of the Assaultron because I forgot that legendaries always explode, but that's neither here nor there since I didn't die. Afterwards, I enter the memory puzzles for Dima, and it's time for a rant. I hate this puzzle. In any other game that isn't running on an engine held together by duct tape and a prayer, this would be a fun tower defense puzzle, but it takes me nearly an hour to run through the minimum necessary memories as these little dumb bugs get stuck on everything in the level. If they didn't have pathfinding issues, this would be fun, but there is nothing fun about going crazy over these bugs being unable to figure out how to walk in an area designed for them. Okay, my rant is over, and we have all the memories necessary to continue our goals with the Children of Atom. I head out towards a nearby smaller island to find the shutdown codes for the infernal windmill powering the fog condensers protecting Far Harbor from his holy fog. I managed to get to the cache and dig it up for the windmill shutdown codes with relatively little issue before I swim all the way from the cache to Far Harbor in order to make my way to the windmill maintenance shack, and once inside I'm confronted by multiple dead Children of Atom and a door that will not open. I end up having to find all of these industrial grade fuses in order to open the door, and then I have to fight through some turrets and a couple of very scary robots in order to reach the terminal controlling the windmill and shut it down. This leaves Far Harbor defenseless against his holy fog, and I then go out to check the carnage in Far Harbor and get a little bit scared of dying before running back to Acadia and speaking with Kasumi to convince her to go home. After everything is said and done, I figure it's time to inform the High Confessor that the island is now the sole property of the Children of Atom, so I make my way into the nucleus and tell him, and he gives me Atom's Bulwark, a legendary piece of Zealot Marine combat armor, and I get the title of Inquisitor with the Children of Atom. After watching another sermon while posing with the High Confessor, I go into the command center of the nucleus again, where I enter Dima's last memory. I then decide to cheese the puzzle with the help of the livestream chat, and I normally wouldn't allow myself to do this, but screw these puzzles, they're horrible, and I didn't want to take an hour to get this one puzzle done. I then use the information from it to go out into the middle of the ocean, where I find a sunken storage crate with the marine armor wetsuit to complete our Zealot marine armor set. With that settled, we have completed all we need to do in Far Harbor, and it's time to go back to the Commonwealth. I sneak over to the boat in Far Harbor and ride it back to find Kasumi reuniting with her family. After watching the loving reunion, the dad pulls me aside and tells me of a box in his shed with loot inside. This box is easily the best legendary farm in the game, as it's a guaranteed random legendary weapon, and you could always save right before digging it up and keep re-rolling which legendary you get until you get the one you want. Just a random Willow tip. Of course, we don't really have a reason to do that, but funnily enough, we get a hilariously useless legendary. The Poisoner's Missile Launcher, which adds poison damage to each attack, but the missile launcher is usually a weapon you're using to one one-shot somebody, I feel. Alright, enough Far Harbor stuff, I'm back in the Commonwealth, and it's time to take on the main story. I start off by making my way over to Covenant, which is the nearest doctor I can think of, and cure my rads, because if I were to take off the robes of Adam's Devoted right now, I would die. I then equip the Zealot Marine Armor, which will be our last armor upgrade for the run, and hot damn, we are looking good. I am really happy with how the run has gone so far, and from this point, I expect the main story to be easy for a little while, but it's gonna get challenging as we go along, and overall, I'm just hoping to have a lot of fun with this run because Far Harbor was a nightmare. So I've already decided that we're going to be siding with the Brotherhood of Steel, as that will give us one extra Child of Adam interaction compared to if we didn't. So it's time to head over to Cambridge Police Station and blow away some ghouls with Paladin Danse, who then asks me to go to ArcJet Systems to get a deep range transmitter with him. At this point, we are massively over-leveled after our time in Far Harbor, so here's a carnage montage of us running around with Danse, and while we watch these satisfying combat, I would like to ask you all to go down below and like the video as it helps the channel massively. I'd also like to say thank you all for helping me pass 20,000 subscribers as well as 1 million views on YouTube, which is awesome, and I'm just blown away by all the support the channel has gotten in such a short time. So, the combat inside ArcJet was not challenging at all, and we just blew away all of the competition, and now we have the Righteous Authority, which is a legendary laser rifle given to us by Danse, for selling. I'm running low on ammo, so I decide to make my way towards Diamond City, and on the way there I encounter Cricket, the wandering arms dealer, and trade with her before making my way to Diamond City, where we gun bash Piper at the gate to avoid all of her dialogue, and once inside Diamond City, I go to Valentine's Detective Agency. It's here where I encounter a hilarious interaction with Ellie, Nick's secretary, as she asks me how my detective work in Far Harbor went.
Something wrong?
You're back. How did everything go with the Nakano case?
I tracked Kenji's daughter to a synth refuge up north, near Far Harbor. She's back home, safe and sound.
That's great. We don't often get to bring people good news. It's a nice change of pace. Thanks for coming in for this one. I knew something good was happening when you and Nick started working together. Don't be a stranger, Gumshoe.
Mind you, we haven't met yet, and then after telling her about what happened in Far Harbor, she goes through her normal dialogue where she meets us for the first time, calling us a stray coming in from the rain.
Miss?
Another stray coming in from the rain. Afraid you're too late. Office is closed.
I know you must be busy, but I won't take much of your time, miss. It's important.
You don't get it. The detective, he's gone. Missing.
I found it hilarious how one moment she's our co-worker and the next moment we are just some random stranger walking into her office. Either way, I tell her I'll go find Nick for her and decide to go on a little bit of a detour up to the mayor's office to steal the key to Kellogg's house because I don't care about continuity at all. I then make my way back to the Cambridge police station, ignoring Nick, I'm sure he'll be fine, where I speak with Danse and the Brotherhood crew for a long while before being told to kill ghouls in a subway station. Overall, the combat in this run so far has been brutal. Far Harbor was so difficult as everything on the island could kill me so quickly, but now that I'm back in the Commonwealth, I'm one or two shotting most of the enemies I come across, and even when they do hit me, it doesn't hurt much. I feel really powerful, and it's really fun. Other than the Assaultron and the shotgun runs, I never really got to a point where I was just really powerful for a long period of time, but now that I'm in it again, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop and for combat to get hard again once the level scaling catches up to me. After clearing out the ghouls, I make my way back to the police station where Danse tells me to go find out what happened to the recon team that came before him. I head out to their last known location, and of course, it is none other than the Holotape Gang! Let's give it all up for the Holotape Gang in the house! I'm such a freaking nerd sometimes. What's wrong with me? Either way, I get the Battlefield holotape from Knight Varnum, which sends me to the National Guard building where we murder some ghouls and afterwards find a holotape telling us to go to the nearby satellite array to find another missing member of the patrol. When I approach the array, there's a ton of super mutants and I try and snipe off the mutant that uses a missile launcher on one of the towers, but end up just running into one of his stray missiles and dying. My next attempt goes better, but the mutants are really tanky and eat up almost all of my ammo. The fighting here is intense for the first time since I've gotten back into the Commonwealth, but that's not really to be unexpected. Super mutant camps are generally just very difficult to deal with, and overall, this is just a taste of what the game is heading towards with the level scaling. Although I do manage to get through without dying again, so maybe it isn't a taste, maybe it's just like a sampling. Either way, I find the last holotape and make my way up to the bunker on the northern edge of the Commonwealth where I accidentally mess up and don't listen to all of the holotapes before opening the door, which causes me to have to kill Paladin Brandis. I then loot his home and make my way back to the police station where Dance is mad at me for killing him. But then he kind of just gets over it and we hug it out, and with that, it's time to continue the main storyline since there's no more Brotherhood of Steel stuff to do. Also, I realized just now that because of the Start Me Up mod, I need to run to Vault 111 really quick in order to progress things as the mod changes how the main story works. Since we aren't the sole survivor from Vault 111, we have to go find out what happened there in order to progress the story, and I figured I should do that now. I make my way there and use Adam's judgment to test the value of some unholy rad roaches before finding the corpse of a woman in Vault 111. On her corpse, I find a holotape that, once played, reveals how her baby was kidnapped and husband murdered by some mercenary. Being the upstanding citizen and member of the church that we are, I need to report this to someone. But who should take on such a case? Oh, right, there's a detective that we learned about earlier, isn't there? I'm sure he could help. I start making my way towards the subway station Ellie mentioned earlier and come across some ghouls that need to be judged by Adam before getting sidetracked by this magical talking door. I do a naughty and lie to the door, but somehow it works out and we gain entry into this pre-war repository of knowledge known as a biblioteca. I then find this little knick-knack in a back room that makes me feel smarter before a whole bunch of super mutants attack. While I respect their embrace of Adam's glow, I cannot stand by and let them desecrate a place of knowledge, so I dispatch them with glee as my holy crusade feels unstoppable. When all is said and done, I stand amongst many dead super mutants and loot them all before heading back towards Park Street Station again, but before I arrive, I see a boat in the pond that seems like a good chance for target practice. I fire a couple of rounds at it, and all of a sudden, the boat reveals that it's attached to a super mutant behemoth. The fight with the massive abomination is rough, and I nearly die to his unholy rock throw attack, but I use explosive shot on him, and it's super effective, bringing down the Goliath to my David. I then loot him and enter Park Street Station, and you know what? Here's another carnage montage. I managed to use all of my holy arsenal of Adam against these mafioso goons throughout this dungeon, and honestly, I just want you all to enjoy the destructive force of Division and how peaceful it is knowing each of these misguided thugs are returned to his holy glow. Alright, that's enough carnage for now. Let's go confront Skinny Malone. I decide that talk is relatively cheap and start off the conversation by using Adam's judgment to kill one of his thugs and Darla, only to die quickly afterwards in a hail of bullets from Skinny and the other thug. I think I got a little bit too hyped after my inquisition inside Vault 114, but nevertheless, we slept inside and I decide to try again, this time using the kiloton radium rifle to blow the bloated gangster away before having a bit of a fashion show with Nick as we make our escape. I then speak with Nick once we're outside and he tells me to go meet him at his office to discuss the kidnapping and murder I recently found out about. I agree and make my way over there so I can sit in a comfy chair and tell him and Ellie all about the holotape I found. He then suggests we go over to Kellogg's house, which I think is a great idea. After all, I did steal that key oh so long ago for a reason. We enter the house and I loot everything to the point where it's hard to stand before making fun of Nick.
What? The great Clockwork Dick is stumped?
It's Synth Detective, jackass. If you're gonna be that way, you might as well get the make and model right.
I then give a cigar to Dogmeat. Now you may be wondering why all of this is happening if you are new to Fallout 4, and if so, let me recap the story so far. Starting off, we found a holotape in Vault 111 that revealed a kidnapping and murder to us. We then saved Nick Valentine and told him everything we knew about this kidnapping and murder. He then connected the dots and realized that Kellogg must be the man behind the heinous acts, so we broke into Kellogg's house in a hopes of finding out where he went. We then found a cigar brand that Kellogg likes in his house and let Dogmeat sniff it in order to track down his scent and bring us to him. Now we need to follow Dogmeat, or if you're like me and have played this game too much, you make your way over to Fort Hagen knowing that that's where Kellogg is hiding out. And that's where we are now, at Fort Hagen, and before we storm the fort, I'd like to bring something up. Has anyone else noticed that there's always a legendary Radstag near the fort when you do this quest? Without fail, I find one every time, and this time it gave me quite possibly the best legendary I've ever had in a run, an Assassin's Minigun. This really isn't all that useful for this run, but I figured I'd let you know all about it and see if anyone else always finds this or if I'm just like crazy and connecting dots that don't exist. Either way, we storm the fort and the combat is really fun and rewarding. All of the pain in Far Harbor has paid off big time, as now we are just moving through the Commonwealth enemies with little to no issue. The synths here are slightly problematic and take a few more shots to go down, but in generally I'm able to take them down and not get hurt too much by their lasers. I slog through them, alternating between bashing them to bits with Adam's judgment and blowing them away with the radium rifle until I reach the final room with Kellogg. I call him some mean names before unleashing Adam's divine justice on the evil man, dividing him where he stands before dealing with the last of his synth lackeys. I then steal a part of his brain, his gun, and his cybernetics before reading his diary and heading outside to watch a big beautiful Zeppelin fly across that blue Commonwealth sky while a man on the PA system spouts intentions. It's quite a nice moment, but it passes quickly and we make our way over to Nick Valentine's office to speak with him and Piper. Eventually, we decide on a plan to go to Goodneighbor and speak with Dr. Amari about the piece of brain I stole from Kellogg. I tell Nick I'll meet him there and then make my way over to Goodneighbor, where I turn an extorting thug into a pile of meat before talking to the town mayor and running over to the memory den where we watch Kellogg's life story, or rather, run through it, as this section of Fallout 4 was a mistake and I don't care who you are. After the second or third time going through these memories, you will hate doing it. Either way, I learned the Institute is using teleportation and, oh right, I haven't mentioned the Institute. You know the synths back in Acadia? They were made by the Institute, and in general, the Institute is the boogeyman of the Commonwealth. They are a super advanced group of scientists that no one can find, and Kellogg was working for them. Either way, we found out they use teleportation, and that's why no one can find them, and yeah, now it's time to go to one of Adam's holiest sites, the Glowing Sea, to track down Virgil, a rogue Institute scientist who's hiding in the Glowing Sea. I make my way to the edge of the Glowing Sea and start my pilgrimage to the Crater of Adam, where we started this run so long ago. I can't wait to see my brothers and sisters again and tell them of all the work I've done in Far Harbor, so I start my journey by coming across these cabins that are infested with super mutants when suddenly a Brotherhood vertibird shows up and drops off some troops to fight them. I join in and help the Brotherhood kill off the super mutants before taking a nap in a bed at the cabins and taking my first steps back into the Glowing Sea. The journey to to the crater was about as easy as traveling through the glowing sea could be. I have to fight some enemies like bloatflies and rad scorpions, but overall, it wasn't too horrible. I tell Sister Isolde of my time in Far Harbor, and that I mean her no harm, and she accepts me into her flock gracefully. I then ask her about Virgil, and she gives me directions to his cave, and I make my way there uneventfully and deal with the Deathclaw outside quite easily before entering and going through the long and boring dialogue with the former Institute scientist turned super mutant. I then have to use some Radaway and wait in his cave because I am very close to dying before heading back out into the glowing sea. Along the way out of the glowing sea, I end up killing some more rad scorpions and a Deathclaw while trying to manage the rads I've been soaking up, and I eventually reach the cabins I slept at before entering, but can't sleep because there's an enemy nearby. I'm confused for a bit until Absalom comes rocking up from around a corner and absolutely domes me with his hunting rifle. I sigh in frustration and decide that I'm not doing all of that again. The rads are too taxing to just try and run through it with a little bit of Rad-X to help, so instead I make my way to the Cambridge police station where I report in with Dance before getting to go on a Vertibird carnival ride up to the Prydwen. Once on board, I listen to a speech given by Elder Maxon before aggressively jiggling my body at him and meeting the crew of the Prydwen one by one while wearing Darla's nice dress. I then talk to Elder Maxon on the flight deck and head over to Fort Strong because he wants the nukes there and it's infested with super mutants. I make my way over to the island and start cheesing it incredibly hard by realizing that I have a level up banked. I use the level up to take the second rank of the Aqua Girl perk, which makes me undetectable while submerged. So I force the super mutants of Fort Strong to play Whack-A-Zealot. I pop up and fire off a few rounds, killing a mutant, and then slip under the waves to never be seen again. I'm practically half Mirelurk at this point, as I slowly but surely rip and tear through the super mutants one by one. If this was a movie, it'd be a B-horror movie where there's like a water-based serial killer popping up and picking off teenage super mutants as they're on vacation at their uncle's cabin on an island. It was so much fun, and the dungeon of Fort Strong itself afterwards was a cakewalk. I speak to Dance before leaving the fort and returning to Maxon, who gives me the Vertibird signal grenades I need to travel through the glowing sea with ease and no fear of radiation. I then immediately use one to travel to the Crater of Adam and speak with the sister there again, only for rad scorpions to attack the children of Adam there, and oh no, they can't hurt them because they're all using gamma guns. Well, I can't let a couple of rad scorpions wipe out all of my church here, so I go at it trying to kill the rad scorpions, and while a few children of Adam die here, we eventually reign victorious after a butt-clenching duel to the death with the final rad scorpion. I then go speak with Virgil again, who tells me to go hunt down a Courser, which is a super advanced murder synth. Of course, I gleefully agree to kill one for him, and then head off to Green Tech Genetics to climb a tower full of gunners and confront a Courser. The combat inside is actually quite fun and engaging. I'm having to use corners and cover, but it's not super slow like it normally is. I'm able to progress at a good pace, and there's even some challenging bits like when I had to use a stealth boy at one point to avoid a missile launcher wielding gunner. Overall, it's a fun little combat romp until we reach the top floor where I try and drag the friendly neighborhood gunner known as Stevette up the stairs, but get bored and decide to leave Stevette behind and use Adam's judgment to confront the Courser. At first I think it's going well, but soon after running away like a coward, I die to the Courser's onslaught. Oh boy, I haven't saved in a very long time. Well, after spending a small eternity making it back to Green Tech and fighting through all the gunners, I decide I'm not gonna mess around with melee and instead use the kiloton radium rifle to spread the Courser's limbs throughout the room. I then ride the elevator down and make my way over to the Old North Church, where I have the railroad decode my Courser chip before using my arsenal of Adam to slaughter them because I don't want to come back to church next Sunday, and I dare you to name a better excuse than a massacre. I then write a Vertibird to Virgil and give him the Courser chip info, and he gives me the schematics for the gizmo that will teleport me into the Institute. I then head over to the Prydwen and inform Elder Maxon I have a way into the Institute, who tells me to speak with Proctor Ingram. I do just that, and after a long techno mumble mumbo-jumbo conversation and building the signal interceptor, I speak with Elder Maxon before telling Ingram I'm ready and step onto the platform which teleports me into the Institute. Once inside, I use the network scanner on a terminal and ride a couple of elevators only to run into a glitch where Sean won't talk to me. I hereby call this glitch the Deaf Sean Shimmy, as we are saying Sean at him and he doesn't respond until I get frustrated and start shooting wildly in the room, accidentally killing myself with the explosive radium rifle.
Can't pick this. Sean? 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 Sean?
I go through building the interceptor a second time and then get really confused as Elder Maxon is going for a swim. I swim up to him and we have a nice chat in Adam's holy water before I step onto the teleporter again and get into the Institute once more, where this time everything goes as it should and we meet all of the division leads of the Institute one by one, finishing with Dr. Lee, the scientist Maxon wants me to bring back to the Brotherhood of Steel. After a long talk with her, she tells me to find evidence of why Virgil left the Institute, and I agree before heading off to Bioscience to do just that. I fight through a couple of turrets, an angry Assaultron, and a bunch more turrets before entering Virgil's laboratory, where I grab his holotape and serum before returning to Lee, who tells me she will return to the Brotherhood. I then speak with Father, who asks me to help recover a rogue synth, and I agree before realizing that I have another game-breaking glitch. This time, I can't teleport outside of the Institute because I don't have the CIT ruins discovered. And since I'm not in the mood to go through all of that again for a third time, and I don't think you all will mind me fixing a bug, I decide to enable fast travel for this one time just to teleport out of the Institute and return to the Pridwin, where I talk to Ingram and give her the network scanner before reporting to Maxon, who tells me to talk to Ingram, who shows me a disassembled Liberty Prime, before telling me to talk to Lee, who I talked to and convinced to work on Liberty Prime again. And wouldn't you guess it, after all of that, I need to talk to Ingram and Lee again down at the gantry. Man, this questline has a ton of back and forth, and it's kind of annoying, but either way, I finished talking to Lee and Ingram at the control station for Liberty Prime's gantry, and they tell me to build some magnetic limb actuators for the big boy. I had already grabbed some high power magnets earlier and used them to build 4 actuators before returning to Lee and Ingram, who tell me to go to the edge of the glowing sea to meet with Scribe Halen because we need to go find nukes for Liberty Prime's backpack, and apparently they might be in the glowing sea. I grab a vertibird out to where she is, and of course, there's a huge battle, as there always is when I come to meet Halen here. I fight some gunners and assaultrons for a bit, while the other Brotherhood of Steel members fight everything that moves in a 5-mile radius, and eventually the fighting dies down and we speak to Scribe Halen. She gives us a beacon and says go look in the glowing sea for nukes, and if I find them, to turn on the beacon. So I start swimming through the glowing sea, killing rad scorpions and deathclaws like they tweren't nothing, until eventually I come across this holy monument in the glowing sea. A massive pyramid amongst Adam's holy glow, and I enter to fight my way through mole rats and ghouls, finding some of my brothers and sisters' corpses along the way until I reach a room with an Assaultron and a child of Adam by the name of Brother Henry. I tell him I'm a part of the Far Harbor Church of Adam, and he gladly gives me the password to his computer, which I use to open the door to the nuke storage and place the beacon. Why am I doing this dumb voice? I don't even know where that came from. I was just voicing as like, all right, we're gonna be a hillbilly now. Whatever. I hope you all enjoyed that. I then call the elevator to leave this holy place and kill a glowing one ghoul before exiting the Sentinel site and call a vertibird, and holy crap, that was scary. Those bud bloogs came out of nowhere and I was panicking trying to get away on the vertibird. Luckily, it didn't do anything but take a few days off the end of my life as we ride back to the Pridwin and speak with Ingram and Lee. They thank me for helping them and tell me to press the big red button to start the the power shunt for Liberty Prime. The big boy springs to life, and it's a beautiful sight to behold before I'm told to speak with Maxon, who accuses me of being a traitor and hiding secrets from the Brotherhood of Steel about Dance being a synth. I tell him maybe Dance doesn't know he's a synth, and that calms him down before he tells me to go find and kill Dance. I head off to talk with Proctor Quinlan, and while I do so, I'm interrupted by Scribe Halen, who is angry. I then follow her down into a dark part of the Prydwen where she tells me where Dance is and asks me to give him a chance. I then grab a vertibird out to listening site Bravo, where I blow up some turrets outside the bunker, some protectrons inside the bunker, and Dance, who is hiding in the deepest part of the bunker. With Dance dead, I return to the Prydwen and speak with Maxon, who gives me the rank of Paladin before telling me to speak with Captain Kells, who wants me to kill the railroad? What? They're already dead. I hope this isn't a bug, but nevertheless, I make my way over to the Old North Church and kill a bunch of railroad agents throughout the church, and the fighting is truly trivial as they do not pose any threat to me. I'm honestly more worried about pissing off my Brotherhood allies than the railroad agents hurting me because I have an explosive gun. I eventually make my way into the railroad HQ and yeah, they're all still dead, but luckily that completes the quest and we can now make our way outside and back to the Prydwen, where Kells congratulates us on another successful mission and chastises us for not recovering Pam. He then tells me to speak to Ingram, who tells me we're gonna go on a little vertibird ride to the mass fusion building. I head off to the vertibird, and when I try to enter, I get a pop-up saying some scientists will be mad with me if I get on it, and honestly, screw science. I'm a member of the church, we don't need science. With that, I enter the vertibird and ride all the way to mass fusion with Proctor Ingram, where we circle the building, letting synths shoot at us for a long time until the pilot says he's taken too much damage and is gonna drop us on the roof. I jump out of the vertibird and kill a couple of synths before being killed myself. This may be rough, but I try again, and this time the fighting goes a lot better. I manage to slowly but surely fight my way through the synths, and they are quite strong, being able to take quite a few hits before going down, and while they use weaker lasers, it's still a problem if multiple of them are shooting at me. Groups of 3 to 5 can really drain my health quickly. The worst part of fighting through mass fusion was by far the elevator ride, as it was nerve-wracking, and I nearly end up causing my own death multiple times as I would shoot the railing right in front of me while trying to hit the synths, and this combined with the explosive effect meant I kept breaking my own arms and dealing a ton of damage to myself. Luckily, I reached the bottom of the elevator without too much issue, but I really hope I don't have to do that ride again since it's kind of rough. I make my way to the basement of mass fusion, where the agitator that Ingram needs is, and I open the door to the reactor and attempt to run up to the reactor and get the agitator while raw dogging the rads, but they kill me because I usually do this with power armor, and having no rad resistance in this room is a death sentence. Luckily, getting back to this point wasn't too terrible as I didn't die at all, and I speak with Ingram, who gives me 2 doses of Rad-X, which now means I have 3 in total. I use all 3 doses and run through the reactor, grabbing the agitator, and only barely manage to get out before dying. I then have to fight through a sentry bot and 2 assaultrons, and this gets a bit hairy. The sentry bot manages to get quite close and start dealing damage to me, but I run away and kill it before the 2 assaultrons come out, but they were actually no issue for me as I kind of just blew them up with the radium rifle without them ever hurting me. I then exit the basement, and on the way up in the elevator we hear an explosion and it sounds like we are in for a fight. I take down a few synths in the main lobby, but decide that discretion is the better part of valor and make my exit running past the Brotherhood allies, and then make my way back to the Prydwen, where I speak with Ingram, who tells me to shove the agitator into Liberty Prime's rear hole, which is just so naughty it almost makes me reconsider working for the Brotherhood, but in the end I shove it into the big boy and go press a power button, and here's a montage of our walk together. I really like the Liberty Prime walk. I know I've talked about it before, but it's just kind of fun and relaxing to watch the big beautiful robot waltz around the Commonwealth and kill everything. While we do so, I want to ask you to consider subscribing to this channel if you are enjoying this video, and let's face it, you've watched quite a far way into this video to not be liking it, right? Speaking of liking, you should also like this video if you made it this far, as it helps other people see it and tells YouTube that this video is good. Lastly, you should consider joining the channel membership if you want access to every video early, as well as access to all the streaming VODs where I stream these recording sessions live for these challenge runs. You all are so beautiful, and oh, look at that! Here we are at the CIT ruins, and it's time to jump into a a hole in the ground and infiltrate the Institute. I go full Doom mode on the Institute in this run. I'm walking down corridors, blowing enemies away left and right, and I even deal with some gorillas and teach some scientists to use their indoor voice before I make my way out into the main section of the Institute, where I begin to take things a little bit slower and let the other Brotherhood members do the heavy lifting. Eventually, I make my way to Father's room, where I introduce him to Adam in the most direct way before using his computer to lift the lockdown, and then I make my way with Maxon and the other Brotherhood members to the reactor room of the Institute, where I have the funniest moment of this run with a legendary synth. I started off the fight by blowing off his arms with the kiloton radium rifle, and then he starts running at me with no arms, and I was just laughing so hard on stream at this Monty Python bit being played out in Fallout 4. He couldn't hurt me, it was so funny. Either way, I plant the fusion charge and teleport out of the Institute, leaving Synth Sean behind before pressing a big red button while answering the question, can I beat Fallout 4 survival difficulty as a child of Adam? Yes, yes I can. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting a new challenge suggestion. I want to give a special thanks to Rad King for collaborating with me and lending his voice for the Visions of the Fog quest, and go check him out if you want some awesome lore videos. I'd also like to thank my Patreons and channel members, as their support has been tremendous. If you like this video, check out my last Fallout 4 challenge run with only revolvers on survival difficulty. You all are beautiful, and this is Willow, signing off.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.